All right, gardeners, it's time. Time to choose which types of tomatoes you're going to grow in your garden this year. It's a big choice. Homegrown tomatoes are one of the best loved parts of the home garden. It's one of the crops that everyone looks forward to all year. I don't know about you, but my garden is looking pretty inspiring right about now. No. I love January. There are countless different types of tomatoes, different varieties, different colors, different sizes, different shapes. What I tend to choose the tomatoes to grow in my garden by, though, is taste. I like to eat mine fresh. I have no idea how to can tomatoes or tomato products, so I'm really just interested in which tomatoes taste the best when you eat them fresh. Right from the garden or on a lovely sandwich, that's what I'm after. First, I'll give you the specific types of tomatoes that tend to be the tastiest, and then we'll go over some general tips about how to make any tomato plant produce the yummiest tomatoes possible. I've grown and tasted and enjoyed and not enjoyed different kinds of tomatoes for 4 or 5 years now in my garden, and I'm really enjoying certain varieties, and then there's others I'm like, why did I even bother to water this? It's so worth putting time into choosing the right type of tomatoes for you, which types of tomatoes you like to grow, and if you're choosing them based on which are the tastiest, here are 7 really tasty, top tasting tomatoes to grow in your garden this year. Best tasting tomato for me overall and for a lot of other gardeners is Brandywine. This is the classic, popular, red, pink heirloom tomato. They're big, they have those lovely ribs, they're just beautiful, and they taste amazing. There's a lot of other tomatoes that kind of look like them, but the classic pink, red Brandywine tastes fantastic. A sun-ripened, homegrown Brandywine tomato is the standard that most gardeners tend to rank other tomatoes against. So definitely start there. I always grow a few Brandywines in my garden, and I'm always so glad that I did. Number 2 is Cherokee Purple. This is another fantastic tasting heirloom tomato. They have this beautiful, almost dark maroon skin when they ripen on the vine, and they're juicy, delicious, and a lot of gardeners actually have years where they prefer the taste of the Cherokee Purple to Brandywine. So another fantastic tasting tomato to try. Have you clicked the like button yet? Clicking the like button is great because it tells YouTube to send this video out to new viewers. And of course, we all want to spread our totally normal and not at all over the top love of homegrown tomatoes with potential new gardeners. So if you could click the like button, that would be fantastic and totally make my day and hopefully introduce somebody else to growing delicious tomatoes in the backyard. Number 3, Black Krim. This is another heirloom. This one has a beautiful peel. It's from Europe, and it has that complexity of flavor that makes it rate really, really highly, and often too at the top of taste tests. So Black Krim should be on your list to try. Number 4 is the pineapple tomato. This is another heirloom, and it looks a lot like Brandywine, except for that it's orange. It's yellowy orange, like a pineapple, but also like a pineapple, it has this totally unique tropical taste that's sweeter than a lot of other tomatoes. So if you like sweet tomatoes or you really would like to grow a big yellow orange tomato, definitely pineapple is recommended. So the 4 tomatoes that I just talked about, Brandywine, Cherokee Purple, Black Krim, pineapple, those are all heirloom varieties. That means that they've been around for generations. We're used to growing them. They tend to grow in these really long, crazy vines that definitely need to be trellised or staked or something. So you're gonna have to do some kind of support structure to help these crazy vining plants. They're not the kind of modern ones that just grow in a nice little bush shape. So those are 4 heirloom tomatoes, but heirloom tomatoes aren't the only tomatoes that necessarily taste great. There are some modern ones that instead of being bred for, to ship well or for canning, there are some modern ones that have been bred for a fantastic taste. So let's look at 3 of those. If you're looking at growing maybe a more modern type of tomato or a different tomato than just the classic big heirlooms, or if like me, you just like to grow all kinds of tomatoes. Number 5 is green zebra. These are medium-sized tomatoes that are green, and as the name suggests, they have these fun little stripes on them. They do go like a little bit yellow. The background color does go a little bit yellow as they ripen in the sun, but they are a pretty green tomato, and you'd think they would be really tart because, you know, they look unripe or something, but they're not. They are absolutely delicious. They're beautiful. They look pretty in photos and totally worth growing. I think they were bred in the 80s, but they were bred with heirloom stock. So they do have those long vining vines that the tomatoes grow on, but they're very productive and fun to grow, fun to look at. They're definitely recommended. Number 6 is red snapper. These are big, normal looking, round, red tomatoes, but they taste incredible. If you're gonna grow like a modern hybrid type of tomato, try this one. They grow in like a more of a bush shape than the heirloom types, and that's really nice if you're short on space or you don't wanna like build a giant trellis kind of thing for your tomatoes, and they taste fantastic, and the look of them is kind of more like a grocery store tomato. So if that's a concern, if you've got kids that are maybe a little bit squeamish about trying funny looking vegetables, definitely try red snapper. I always love to grow heirlooms. Like I think I'll grow Brandywine every year forever, but it is so nice to have some reliable, highly productive, modern bred hybrids like red snapper. Number 7 is one of my favorites, sun gold. These are little orange cherry tomatoes that taste the best, certainly for cherry tomatoes, but taste good enough that they make the list overall of the best tasting tomatoes. They have this bright orange color and a bright orange flavor. It's sweet, it's tart, and they almost kind of just pop as you eat them. They are a pleasure to grow, they're lovely to eat, and they're not that hard to grow. They, like most hybrids, they're easier to grow than some of the heirloom types. They've been bred for disease resistance, and man, once they start growing, they don't stop. They produce tomatoes all summer, and they're always the first ones in my garden to be ready to harvest. I think because they're so small. It's really nice to have some tomatoes ready early in the season before the big heirloom types can be harvested. Those last 3, the green zebra, the red snapper, the sun gold, I find those to be a little bit easier to grow than the heirlooms, but of course you have to grow the big heirlooms because they're so delicious too. You can't not grow them, so this is how you end up with way too many tomato plants. No matter which kind of tomatoes you're growing in your garden, there are a few overall things that you can do to make the plants healthy and produce tastier tomatoes. Number 1 is sunlight. So your plants are making the tomatoes from the energy that they get from the sun, so they need lots of sun. So don't put them in a shady corner or some kind of questionable spot. Put them in the sunniest spot that you've got. Try to keep the leaves on the tomato plant really healthy because they are the equipment that the tomato plant is using to get the sunlight to make your delicious tomatoes. So take good care of the leaves and make sure they're getting lots of sun. Water is also another big concern with tomato plants. It's hard because you don't want too much, you don't want too little. What you want is consistency. You want the plants to have enough water so that they're thriving, but you don't want to be totally drowning them in water where you're starting to get problems with rot or like the tomatoes or just have too much water in them and taste watery. So definitely balance is the key on the watering. I tend to be pretty minimal on feeding for tomatoes. Obviously, when they're a seedling, I don't feed them at all. But then when they go outside, they do get some compost. I think homemade compost is fantastic for tomatoes and for like all my plants. There's never enough homemade compost. But definitely, if you have some, save your compost for your tomatoes or the crops that you're really excited about growing because it is a really valuable resource. After the plants go outside and they've become established outdoors, I do tend to feed them maybe once a month with a high quality organic fertilizer. So I look for something that's OMRI certified and usually easy to apply. So for me, that tends to be granular fertilizers, although I do like the liquid ones too. But right now, the granular fertilizers, the slow release organic ones are tending to be a bit of a time saver for me. So I like that. There are so many more varieties of great tasting tomatoes. So have a look around, see what your local seed companies have. Generally, the yellow-orange ones tend to be sweeter, lower in acid. The darker red-purple ones tend to be more intensely flavored with that balanced acidic sweet taste. And most of the green ones are pretty pretty tart, zesty even. So those are some general rules, but of course, check out the exact variety before you buy the seeds or the seedling so that you know what you're getting and you're putting your time into the tomatoes that you want. And remember, the best tomatoes come straight off the vine. There is nothing like standing in the garden and enjoying a fresh, sun-warmed, ripe tomato that you grew yourself right in the garden. Click the like button if you enjoyed this video, and please, please, please leave a comment about what you think are the most tasty kinds of tomatoes. Everyone has totally different preferences, and I'm so interested, and I know everybody else is so interested, about which are your favorite kinds of tomatoes. So leave a list, or even just one or two of your favorite, tastiest types of tomatoes, ones that you've grown, ones that your friends have grown that you've gotten to try, or ones that you look for at the farmer's market. Which do you think are the tastiest? Are some years different? I know it is for me, but let us know which are your tastiest types of tomatoes so that we can all see what's going on in tomato world and which tomatoes we should all be growing this upcoming season. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.